Hi, this is Mrs. Brown from Research Triangle High School. The purpose of this presentation is to take a look at chapters 16 and 17 of the Scarlet Letter and kind of go over what happened and take a look at what Hawthorne is doing in these chapters. Now, chapter 16 is A Forest Walk, and this is Hester, who's made up her mind that she's got to let him know that she's got to let Arthur Dimmesdale know that Chillingsworth is out to get him, that she can't keep this secret anymore. Even though she swore to Chillingsworth that she would keep his secret, she's decided that Chillingworth has gotten so evil with what this is going on that she never understood that was going to be his intention, or she wouldn't have agreed to it in the first place. So she's trying to find a place to meet up with Dimmesdale alone, and she doesn't really want to go to his office because that could, well, even though they said nobody would really suspect anything, she just wants to find a place that's apart from prying eyes and kind of outside of the town. And she knows that he's known for taking these long meditative walks out by himself, and she keeps thinking she's going to run into him at some point. And she decides to walk outside of the town herself. And even as she's leaving, Hawthorne's hitting us over the head again with his symbolism, talking about leaving the town is like leaving this moral wilderness in which she had been so long wandering. This idea that the forest represents this open place of non-judgment, whereas the town is all of these rules and regulations and structure. Now, Pearl goes with her because, of course, Pearl goes everywhere that Hester goes. And we see this real obvious light and dark imagery. Hester is walking into the darkness of the woods, and you have this sunlight kind of dappling down and peeking out from the clouds. And Pearl is able to go and catch the sunlight. She's able to go and stand where the sunlight is to put her hand out as though it's a sunbeam. And she noticed that the light seems to run away from Hester. And Pearl asked this question in the middle of the woods, said, am I going to have one of those on you, a Scarlet Letter like you have when I grow up? And kind of like, children looking at adults thinking that maybe that's just a sign of adulthood. But actually what Hawthorne is doing here and what Hester sees is this posing this question of innocence versus experience. Pearl doesn't know what she's asking, but basically she's saying, am I going to also sin? Am I going to be part of this adult world? Will I have to deal with this punishment? And Hester, of course, is a little confused about exactly how to respond. Now, Pearl, being the little brat she sometimes can be, demands a story from her mom, says, I'll hold still and I'll stay put as long as you promise to tell me a story. And so Pearl herself starts talking about these black man myths, and people tell me about this black man, and she's thinking of it like the boogeyman kind of thing. And Hester actually feeds into this, and this is stories that Pearl would have grown up with hearing basically talk about the devil or about Satan from everyone from Mistress Bellingham, who's the governor's sister that we know is a practicing witch. And Hester said that she met him once. In other words, just that one time in the forest when she was tempted by sin, that was the devil tempting her. And there's this interesting parallel between the stream or the brook that's running through the forest there, where Pearl and the stream seem to be very much alike, that they're both this organic flowing thing with this where their energy and their life comes from is a great mystery. Hester's always looking at Pearl and saying, who are you? What are you? Where are you from? The way that we might look at water and saying, what's this source? Where does this come from? How does it, carve a path through the forest here? And finally, the minister does appear walking down the path. And Pearl says, is that the black man? Which is not anywhere that Hester wants to go. And Pearl once again notices that the minister always keeps his hand over his heart and says, is it a mark like yours? That, because it's covering up something the way that yours is there. Only is it on the inside? Did he sign the black man's book and it left a mark there? So pay attention to that if you haven't figured that part out yet. We'll come back to it in a couple chapters. And chapter 17 is entitled The Pastor and His Parishioner, which is Hawthorne sort of pointing out their roles. But if you watch in this chapter, their roles are actually a little bit reversed as we go through this. And Hawthorne describes them as being like two ghosts, like they're not really even real until they touch. And it's that touch together, their relationship, is what has made them real people. And you have this comparison with Hester, who's actually at peace, even though she still has to wear the Scarlet Letter. She's learned how to move on in the world and go out and do good, whereas Dimmesdale has no peace at all. Hester says, is there no reality in the penitence thus sealed and witnessed by good works? Like, in other words, she's trying to say to him, haven't you done enough good things? in order to, feel better about yourself. I mean, all you've done in the world since we sinned that one time is be out there preaching the gospel and working with everyone in your congregation and bringing souls to God. Is that not also as real a penitence as the letter that I have to wear? But Arthur says, no, it's not honest. Hester says, the people reverence thee, and surely thou workest good among them. But Dimmesdale keeps saying, what can a ruined soul like mine effect toward the redemption of other souls, or a polluted soul towards their purification? So he will not even acknowledge that he can do any good because of this. But this moment out here in the forest with Hester is the only relief that he gets, because he can look into an eye that recognizes me for what I am. So being out here with Hester, she knows his sin. She knows that he is this guilty party. And it's the only person in the entire world that can look at him with truth and honesty and where he can relax. So Hester does what she set out to do. She gives him the news. She says, Roger Chillingworth, you can't trust him. He's out to get you. And oh, by the way, he's my actual husband, and I haven't told you all of this time because he made me promise, kind of thing. And at first, Dimmesdale is furious with her, which makes you wonder, like, does he have a right to judge anything that she's done, given that he himself has not really behaved honorably here? But she makes him forgive her. Says, you have to forgive me. You of all other people need to find this in there. And they both together realize that what Roger Chillingworth has done is far worse than what they did to him. What they did was fall in love and have this romantic encounter that they weren't supposed to have under the laws. But what he has done, he has violated in cold blood. Notice that contrast between their hot passion of the moment. They didn't set out to sleep together. They were in love. They met. They had this opportunity. It just happened. But he planned this in cold blood. He's violated the sanctity of a human heart, that sacredness. But they say, thou and I, Hester, never did so. We did not do this. We did not take something sacred and corrupt it. We did not plan to do this. That was never our intention. But it is his. And Hester wonders, if this love that they shared, could that still be their redemption? And she says, what we did had a consecration of its own. In other words, the fact that they were so in love was a kind of a bond and created a kind of holiness, a consecration, even though it was outside of the bonds of marriage. And that in this forest, they are their true selves. That in this forest, that's where their love happened. That's where their crime happened, but there wasn't a crime because they were in the forest outside of the bounds of the village. And notice here that you have this romanticism sensibility, not the Puritan sensibility at all. This is Hawthorne writing from the 19th century back on these Puritan values. And at least two different times in this chapter, Dimmesdale has to ask Hester to be strong for him. Says, you're the one who now has the strength and you have to help me through this. And Hester basically says, let's get out of here. You know what? We have the whole wide ocean. We could go to Europe. We could start over again. If you really feel led to be a minister still, we could go out and you could go work with the Native Americans someplace else. But there's more to the world than this little village. Maybe it's just time we escaped. And he says, lost as my own soul is, I would still do what I may for other souls. So even though Dimmesdale feels like he's damaged, feels like he can't escape, he still has this need to try to reach out and help other people. And Dimmesdale's left to wonder, could they really escape? He's weak. They keep bringing this up over and over again. I mean, we know he's sort of weak on the morality side, but he's weak physically. He's so broken down by all of this. And Hester tries to say, you could just tell people, you could just apologize to God. It says, heaven would show mercy hadst thou but the strength to take advantage of it, looking at what as she's gone through. And together they kind of worry, what's Chillingworth going to do now that his secret's out? Is he going to do something else that's really terrible? And Hester tries again, says, exchange this false life, this life that he's been leading, that he's this pure minister, for a true one. Do anything save to lay down and die. Hester's like, don't give up. There's still a chance. You can still fix everything. But Dimsdale says, nope, they've got to stay put. He says, there is not strength or courage left me to venture into the wide, strange, difficult world alone. And we see this contrast is going to be even more clear in the next chapter, where Hester's public guilt over these years has actually made her strong, but Dimsdale's private guilt has destroyed him. But Hester, in any case, promises that whatever happens, he won't be alone. He's not going into the difficult world alone. If he decides to stay, it won't be alone. If he decides that it's death that's going to take him, he won't be alone. That she will not leave his side. And that's the end for these two chapters. We're going to continue the saga in the next video.